I almost Welcome to Two Brothers Talking.
You're Israel. I'm Eli.
I might change it up. Welcome to Two Brothers Talking. I'm Israel.
And I'm Eli.
Today we're going to explore the top 3 reasons why someone might get stressed out around Thanksgiving. We want to take a minute to just give a shout out to one of our listeners. He's a good friend of ours, Adrian Gonzalez. Your mom let us know that you were excited to see one of our last episodes. And 1, I'm glad that you're watching. And 2, we really miss you, man. It's been a really long time since we got to see you. So
I bet he's like 8 feet tall now.
Seriously, all deep voice and everything with a beard.
Hey,
Probably better beard than I can grow. But it's really warms our heart to hear you, that you're listening, that you're watching, and we just want to say, hey, hello, hope you're doing well. Keep your mom and sister safe. We hope to see you soon.
Reason number 1, not sure how to stay healthy. So staying healthy during the holidays is something that I think is already difficult.
Yeah.
Just because there's so much food.
Yep.
And of course, with COVID going on, it's difficult to kind of stay healthy, make sure that you're being on the up and up as far as sanitation, as far as making sure things are clean. If you compound that with those who are trying to stay healthy and fit, it can be really difficult to balance that with the holidays, which can cause a lot of stress, especially if you've been trying really hard the last couple of months to watch what you eat, to exercise more. You almost feel like the holidays come along and you just kind of throw up your hands and, I guess, I'm going to undo all my work the last couple of months. But the good news is there are steps you can take to not necessarily undo the holidays, but to avoid making those mistakes in the first place. And before we're going to get into some tips, but you have to understand that while these things can be stressful, they don't have to be. You can avoid some of the stress of these kind of, stress-inducing holidays, whether it be things like COVID-19, you're concerned about being healthy, being safe, or if it's eating habits, whether we're going to eat a whole bunch, or whether we're going to, just try and eat very little and try not to offend people.
Right.
Because truthfully, a lot of the holiday food, if we think about it, it's not very healthy. But there are some healthy options out there that don't taste like chalk. So we're going to go through some of those in our tips. But a lot of reasons people get stressed out is because they're not sure how to stay healthy. Yeah,
I think like in terms of staying healthy from COVID-19 or illnesses, we tend to see this time of year because of the temperature dropping, colds, the flus. That really starts to impact whether or not you're going to be able to have a holiday like you might have in the past.
Yeah.
And I think the big question on everybody's mind is, should I have my family over? Family meaning folks that don't live in your house.
Yeah.
And what that looks like. It's been a really long year. A lot of folks haven't seen their family, their loved ones for 9+ months. If we think about it, going back to March, even further for some places, that's a long time. That's a huge impact on your mental health. And Zoom and FaceTime calls, they're great.
They are.
But let's be honest, we miss our family. We miss the embraces. We miss the old times as we've come to call them now. And it's kind of sad. It's 2020, the same year, but it just seems like a different time. Things we never thought would be going on, like face masks in public. That was not something I thought I was going to see in my time, basically.
Yeah.
And so the question that really begs an answer is, what should I do? And while we won't tell you what you should do in this instance, we'll give you some tips on what you can do and how to make the best decision for you, for your family, so you can make sure that you are healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one thing we want to stress very hard is we're not telling you what to do.
Right.
Giving you options.
Now, reason number 2 that can cause a lot of stress is you're not sure what to cook or how much to cook.
Yeah.
And this can be compounded by the fact that you might be trying to eat healthy, as you mentioned. And first of all, there's a lot of misconceptions around weight in the holidays. You don't have to avoid the dinner table because you're watching your weight. First, there are some healthy and delicious options. Let's take turkey, for example. It's a really lean source of protein.
Yeah.
And what I've come to know is it's rich in vitamin B6 and B12. It also is a producer of melatonin, which is great for people that have insomnia. But there's certainly a lot of healthy options.
Mm,
And I think a theme that we expect to see in many households this year is the lack of extra cash.
yeah.
I think that's definitely going to impact, and that probably is impacting what is on the dinner table for Thanksgiving, what you're able to buy. And so I was looking at the jobs report, I think it was for October. It's 11.1 million Americans out of work right
Mm,
now. And yes, we saw a decrease of unemployment and went down to like 6.9%. That's still a lot of
that's
people
a lot of people.
without a job, without the source of income, and maybe unemployment benefits have dried up and they don't know what they're going to do, especially around the holidays. That tends to add another layer of stress. And that's a real problem that a lot of them our fellow human beings, right? I don't want to just put it just to Americans because this is affecting the whole world around us. We just
Yeah.
say the UK go back on restrictions and whatnot. So we're going to start to see that as temperatures drop, and unfortunately COVID cases might increase as a result of, weather and other, circumstances. But that's a real question and concern on everybody's mind. Am I going to be able to afford to buy the food necessary for not only just to eat, but Thanksgiving meal? That's a huge thing.
Yeah, and I think I've never in my life been to a Thanksgiving where there's not enough to eat. It's usually there's so much more we eat leftovers for like the week. So
Yeah.
the reason I say that isn't to just like, oh, look at me never, going hungry, but just to consider how much you normally spend on Thanksgiving. Do you really need to spend all of it?
Yeah. Good question.
First and foremost, do you really have to get, a 81-pound turkey that you have to like buy a new oven to cook? And I'm just exaggerating here for comedic effect, but realistically, we usually make a lot more than we need,
Right.
and a lot of it may go to waste already. So to that degree, uh, there may be mitigating factors that will require us to make less,
Mhm.
whether it be the one income, maybe the family dropped to one income, or maybe no income.
Right.
Maybe we're really struggling here, people. And if that's the case, it's okay to not have the same Thanksgiving this year as last year.
Right.
Take that stress off your shoulders if you can. You know what? I don't think it's a fair expectation, and a lot of times we demand more of ourselves than we should. It's not a fair expectation to think that this holiday we have to make everything okay. That's not something we're going to be capable of doing.
Right.
So whether it be, you know, you have to make less this year, that's okay.
Mm.
And truthfully, if you're trying to watch your weight, that might be better.
Hmm.
A lot of things to consider when going to Thanksgiving is some people they eat one slice of pie and like, oh, I guess I'm cheating today, and they just eat all of the
The
pies.
rest of the pies.
Yeah, they eat like I'm gonna eat 12 different pies. There are ways to stay healthy.
Yeah.
One, it's eat everything in moderation. Understand that a lot of fitness professionals out there encourage cheat meals.
Mm.
Now you notice I said cheat meals, not cheat days, because you try to mix those meals up like amongst different days. At least from my experience and my research, that way you're not overloading your body with sugar and stuff like that. But let's say if I'm down an income in my house and I'm going to be making a smaller Thanksgiving, well, considering COVID, I might have less people over anyway, which would require
Right.
a smaller meal.
Right.
And realistically speaking, if we have to have a smaller Thanksgiving due to needs, that's okay. Thanksgiving and the holidays are often a lot of time. It's a time of a lot of stress for people
Mm.
because they think I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do
Yeah.
this. I would encourage those, and we're going to get into tips, but I would encourage those who feel that stress to take a step back and say, okay, what do I really need to do, and what would I prefer to do?
Mm.
Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of things that we think are they're need to haves when really they're just want to haves. They're not things that are necessary. Like if I think, oh well, my family's going to think less of me because I didn't make an 81-pound turkey, maybe I need to have a
Or like
candid
7
conversation.
pies.
Yeah, like 7 pies. Maybe I need to have a candid conversation with my family. Like, hey, you know what? With all this stuff going on, we're gonna have a smaller Thanksgiving. Maybe make it a potluck if it's not been a potluck. Try to share the burden a little bit,
Mm.
because if you're gonna have folks over, they've been going through the same stuff.
Right.
And one of the worst things we can do in times where things have been tough is try to posture like we're okay
Mm.
when we're not.
Yeah.
So there can be stresses, but I would say there are definitely ways we can avoid them. And unfortunately, and I'm guilty of this too, a lot of our stresses are self-imposed. So try to de-stress yourself by not expecting as much of yourself, and that can be difficult. It's a lot easier said than done. But it can be difficult and stressful when having family over, which leads into tip number 3, or reason number 3. We're not really sure what topics are safe to discuss.
Right. Right.
Anytime family's over for the holidays, it's almost like walking through a minefield. So I know that I've been in family meetings where, 1 minute we're having a great time talking about how great, insert topic here is, and then one person, usually like an uncle or an aunt, says something that's just totally off the walls, and everyone in the room kind of just, and then everyone gives their opinion, and then it
Right.
becomes like a disagreement or an argument, and especially within the current political climate of 2020.
Yeah, I think we covered that in our last episode with causes for divisions in family and whatnot, especially with the election just, passing through, during the holiday season. That tends to be a topic of conversation at the dinner table. um, the issues, the social issues that took place across the summer and really have been happening for a long time, but really came to the surface over the summer. And that's
Yeah,
another potential topic of conversation. And not everybody in your family might see the topic exactly the same way you do. And that tends to elicit a reaction, either positive or negative, the emotions that are attached to it, because we're all human beings and we have a heart.
yeah,
I think that's something that's great and we should celebrate. But oftentimes, those emotions tend to blind us from seeing that that person is someone that also loves us. And because they disagree, doesn't necessarily mean they're an evil person. And because you agree doesn't mean you're a great person either. It
yeah,
just means that you see something differently. That's very difficult to navigate, and that can be a source of stress even before it happens. Right?
yeah.
You see folks walking in, and you're like, "Oh, great, so and so's here. I love them, but man, I don't know what that conversation's gonna
Yeah,
be like. I don't know if we bring this up, if this is gonna happen." And you shouldn't be afraid to have conversations with your family, your loved ones. You shouldn't avoid the discussion because you are afraid what they're going to say. Give people a chance. Like, don't live in the past.
yeah,
Yes, they might historically have gone crazy when you brought up a topic. And if it comes up, don't try to avoid it. But obviously, if you want to avoid it, just don't bring it up, period. But again, if it comes up, just have that discussion, or maybe hold your peace. If that might be an inciting point, maybe don't mention your opinion on it. Stay quiet. There's a old proverb that says silence is wisdom, and oftentimes we work very hard to make sure our voice is heard, and I think that's great. But sometimes our voice doesn't need to be heard,
yeah.
and it's okay to not say something. And in fact, it might help if you don't say something. um, that's not always the case, right? And so I'm not talking about staying silent when you see injustice or
Mhm.
you see a crime being committed or something's happening to you like abuse. Don't stay silent about that. What I'm talking about is just a conversation at the dinner
Yeah.
table, and your comment might incite some reaction. Just keep your comment to yourself.
Yeah, is it worth it? Is it worth adding my 2 cents here? Because I mean, we all have that one, at least one person in our family, like Aunt Joanne comes in, it's like, "Oh, it's about to go down,"
Yeah,
because they always have an opinion on something. But realistically, we have to keep perspective on this is our family. And if you've not seen our previous episode talking about family and things that can divide families, I encourage you to go check it out because we say a lot in that episode. I think that can live into this holiday season as
right.
well, where you have to keep proper perspective. This is someone who loves me. This is someone who I love,
Yeah,
and is a disagreement over the handling of the post office gonna is it really worth the breaking down of a decades long relationship?
yeah,
Really, I don't think at the end of the day our discussion over turkey is going to be you know too detrimental in that case. But I really like your point that sometimes I found that the best thing to do is just bite your tongue and understand that, especially in today's world where we have things like Twitter, everyone wants to say their piece, but you have to understand that we are free to do whatever we want, but we're not free of the consequences of those things. So
Mm,
if I speak my
yeah,
piece, that's throwing it out there, and like a word is like a bullet. You can't call it back once it's sent out. So if I
mm,
say something offensive, I'm responsible for whatever comes after that, even
yep,
if I'm just speaking my piece. And I've worked with people who's like, well, I'm just telling the truth. There's a difference between telling the truth just to say what I want to say, and then there's a difference between saying the truth because it needs to be said. Like in your point, where if you see injustice, you see
yep.
something that needs to be addressing that's one thing.
Mhm,
But I found that in most cases, there's two types of people that they either speak because they have something to say,
mm,
or they speak because they have to say something.
mm,
And I would much rather be the person to speak because I have something of value to add, as opposed to the person who just has to speak because I can't
yeah.
bite my tongue.
Here are 3 tips to make sure that you stay healthy, stress free, and safe during the holidays. Tip 1: plan ahead. That means who's coming, knowing should they quarantine if you are having people come into your
Yeah.
house from outside your house. Should you eat outside? Things
Yeah.
like that. Plan ahead. And so, one, first of all, we highly recommend. We can't stress it enough. Continue your healthy hygiene habits that you've been practicing over the entire pandemic. The holidays shouldn't stop that from happening.
Yeah.
What we mean by that is keep washing your hands, keep wearing your face mask, recovering in places that physical distancing is near impossible, like the store. Look for ways you can continue to stay safe. If you don't need to go out, think about, should I go out? Should I go eat inside that restaurant? And everybody has their own personal opinion on that, but think about ways you can mitigate your potential risk. And then, of course, we can't make the decision for you, and we won't. And we're not going to tell you what you should do in this instance. But here are a few things to consider if you're of the mind that I need to see my family this holiday.
Yeah.
I need them over. If you're that person, here are some things that you should consider. Not necessarily telling you one way or the other, just some things to consider for you.
Good things to keep in mind.
One, where's your family been? I think we made a decision early on in the pandemic, we meaning our family. Um, my mom is immunocompromised. We have young kids in the family, my daughter, my nephews. And so we made a decision early on when they said, find your 10, keep your 10.
Yeah.
We said, one, we want to keep our kids safe, and two, we need to keep our mom safe. So we started making a plan for ways to continue to allow us to stay safe and keep them safe at the same time.
Yeah.
And so you've got to ask yourself, where's my family been? Are they out there going to sitting in restaurants? Are they shopping, not necessarily for groceries, but just out shopping? Are they out going to parties or get-togethers where physical distancing is in effect? Start thinking about those things and asking those questions. It's okay to ask your aunt and your uncle, hey, are you wearing a mask, or are you going out to parties? And you could see their social media shows everything, right? Their snaps. If you see on their snaps that they're hanging out with everybody and their mother and not really taking it seriously, that's something to consider, right? One way and another. If they're out flouting guidelines, then that's something that you might want to take into consideration.
And it may be a difficult conversation to have.
Yeah.
But realistically, and especially in our situation, I've had to distance myself from, certain families, and I love them.
Yeah.
I would love to spend time with them. But as of right now, I can't, because we got our 10, we kept our 10. And realistically, certain people's health is at stake.
Yeah.
And I don't want to compromise the integrity of their health just because I want to spend time with the family. And family is very important. We've
Absolutely.
said it, 100 times on our
Absolutely.
podcasts and in our videos. But at the same time, we have to consider everyone involved, not just our own personal feelings, which can be tough.
Yep.
I know I'm there right now. I've been there. It can be tough, but it's something to consider when you want to consider who's coming over. We've had times in the past where we wanted to have family members over, like for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, and we simply couldn't because they were sick.
Yep.
And we knew that if they came around, yes, we might enjoy, an hour or two with them, but then who would have to pay that price just because we wanted to spend time with them?
Yeah. And mom's been sick for going on 3 years. And so we've had holidays where we've had to, ask people that are sick to just stay home. And it's not because we don't want to see them. It's just because the gravity of her situation, if she gets a simple cold, it could be fatal. And a lot of folks are, well, I'm healthy and I'm not going to be affected by COVID as much as other people. That is great. And I'm happy for you. And I might be okay, but my mom won't be. And so my daughter might not be. And so for those reasons, I have to keep that into consideration and maybe hurt some feelings, not intentionally, but say, I love you so much and I really want to see you. I haven't met some of my cousins. I haven't met some of my friends' kids that they had over the pandemic, and I really want to. But I always got to think about, am I going to put someone else at risk because of what I wanted? And at that point, let's be fair, that's being selfish.
Yeah.
If you're putting yourself and your desires over somebody that will be directly impacted. Something to consider when you are, with all that in mind, you're still, well, I really want to see my family. And at this point, I think the CDC said last Thursday was the last day it'd be safe to start quarantining before Thanksgiving. And so we're past that. And if you're still thinking about it, then maybe think about these things. Temperature checks, check everybody's temperature when they come and let them know, of course, in advance. Say, hey,
just walking, hey, grandma,
here you go. Right. Non-invasive forehead thermometers are available on Amazon. I'm not even going to put a link because we don't, we're not trying to make money off of this. But type that into your phone, what have you, $20. You can find some cheaper. really non-invasive. You just put it up, about an inch away from their forehead, gives you an immediate result. Masks, right? Think about seating. If you have an outside patio, if you are having people over, set the tables up in a safe distance,
Yeah.
right? 6 feet apart at a minimum. That's definitely going to help you. It won't eliminate any risk, but
Mhm.
it'll reduce your risk if you're going to have people over. And as always, I think this is something that we can't stress enough. Check your state, local, county, CDC, and WHO guidelines, because some folks may be able to, have folks over in their city or their county or their state, and others not. I think California just hit past 1 million. Texas just passed 1 million, and then they're going to see some restrictions.
Yeah.
Of course, the UK, we started to see that happening. And so, depending on where you are, this might not be something that's a viable option for you. But if you're in a place where it's a lower risk community and there's a little bit more relaxation in terms of restrictions, if you are going to have people over, just keep these things in mind. That is going to help you have peace of mind. That's going to help minimize, not eliminate, but minimize any potential risk.
Yeah, and I was just about to say that, like, your state's probably going to have some guidelines that you need to follow. The WHO, the World Health Organization, and the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. Oh, those are mouthfuls. They have guidelines that you can look into if you're not sure of what steps to take. Look
Yeah.
into those things. There's definitely a lot of resources available for you. I would also add kind of a word of caution. Don't go to Instagram for
Oh gosh.
how to stay safe from COVID. Don't go to reputable sources. Go to people who do this as a job. People who are doctors with medical degrees.
Oh man.
Don't go to that guy who on YouTube that just has you can be very confident in what you're saying, but very confidently wrong.
Yeah.
So go to people who know what they're talking about. And that's why we don't say, oh, here's all of our recommendations. We'll give you some tips on how to de-stress. We're not going to tell you how to fight COVID because we're not doctors.
Yeah.
So that's why we direct you guys to the CDC, to the World Health Organization, and whether or not you agree with your state's guidelines. And there are instances I know that California has some interesting, I'll just call them interesting guidelines. I don't live in
We
California.
love you guys.
Yeah, we love you guys.
But it's kind of interesting.
It's interesting. I don't live in California. Don't know that I ever will. The weather's nice, but there's a lot of things about California that I don't like. And one of them is the cost of gas. Goodness, that's high.
Yeah. I think it's like $1 to $2 more than we do.
Yeah, we always gas up before we go to California. But that notwithstanding, one of the things that I really want to stress stress. One of the things I really want to stress is the best thing you can do with your family before putting these in place is set the expectation. Yeah. If you're hosting Thanksgiving, set the expectation of this is what we're going to do. And this can also go for things like the hot button topics, but set expectations for these are what we're going to do at the door. That way, it's not a surprise.
Yeah.
No one comes and says, well, I didn't know. And then you either have to turn them away or compromise your safety for that person. Because it's more difficult to turn someone away at your door than it is to, and it's not going to work out over text or a phone call. Yeah. So set expectations. Make sure to be very clear and very honest. Don't be ambiguous. This is what we're going to do. These are going to be the expectations. And if people don't respect that, have a candid conversation as to why.
Yeah.
There has to be the ability to have that conversation and set expectations. That way it's not a surprise. And they're aware of what you're going to do, because we have to understand that, to your point, I may not be at huge risk for COVID. I'm a youngish guy. I'm in good health. I'm not, if I get COVID, chances are I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it. But the others that I impact, the other people I'm around, aren't going to be as lucky. They're not going to be in the same conditions. So I have to be considerate more of them than myself. And we have to be able to take on that responsibility of those who are around. Especially if you have children, if you have older folks that live with you or that you spend time with on a regular basis, you have to consider those people. And that is worth that candid conversation. That's worth that honest conversation. Here's what we're going to do at our Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, we would love to see you at Christmas, or we'll love to see you, once all this stuff settles down.
Yeah. All right. Tip number 2 is keep it simple. And I want to take a moment to talk to the folks that aren't going without. Maybe you have a little bit more. Maybe you haven't been affected directly by loss of income or anything like that. You're in a industry where you didn't see job loss. I want to talk to you for a second, because there's a lot of folks that are going without.
Yep.
And I think this is a great time of year to reflect and start thinking about what you have in excess that you can give, right? We're going to link a couple of local shelters and places in the comments or the description below, because we really want to encourage you. If you have more than enough, give back. There's local shelters, there's local community organizers that start putting together meal drives and other things that help families that don't have enough or maybe go without on a regular basis during the holiday season. This an opportunity for them to maybe get a Thanksgiving meal or clothing or what have you. So I want to highly encourage you. If you do have enough, more than enough, consider giving back to someone that might not. It's going to go a long way, and it feels really good to be able to help people. Um, if you are the one going without, right? I think around this time it's even more evident and more clear around Thanksgiving and Christmas and any other holidays that you celebrate, because maybe the table's a little less bare. Maybe you don't have the money for the decorations that you want. I think it's incredibly easy to fall into the comparison
Hmm.
game and mindset. You look on Instagram or Snap or wherever you're on social media and you see all these beautiful spreads and influencers sharing, their gorgeous meal and their caviar and what have you. And you're like, man, that's great. I wish I had that.
Yeah.
And sometimes social media only shows a little bit, doesn't tell the whole story. And even if it shows more than, usual, that shouldn't be something that you look at and say, you know what, I don't I can't compete with that. I can't have what they have. And maybe right now you can't. But an idea, if maybe you can't buy a turkey or ham, because let's face it, they're kind of
They're
expensive.
expensive.
I look at the prices and I'm like, geez, all right. I mean, let's get it. And I'm blessed for that, the ability to do that, but maybe you can't. Here's an idea: rotisserie chickens.
Yep.
They're a great alternative. They're another lean source of protein. They're delicious. They have them at pretty much every local grocery store, Fry's, Walmart, Sam's Club, wherever you're at, Sprouts. They're $6 to $8 depending. Sometimes it's less, and you can feed about 2 to 3, 4 people sometimes with just one.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a cheaper alternative to getting a turkey if you just don't have it.
And
S
greatest thing, you don't have to cook them.
Yeah,
They're
they're
already
already
cooked.
cooked, and so if folks don't like them, you don't have to feel bad, like, "Sorry, it was Walmart. It's their fault, not mine."
Yeah.
You can blame them, but it's an alternative, right? It's a cheaper option, and, if you're looking at, making sides, mashed potatoes, a potato bag, if you can't afford that, go to your local dollar store and buy those
Yeah.
pre-made, ready to mix boxes.
You'd be surprised. Those are pretty
Yeah,
good.
add some milk to it, and they could be passable as real potatoes. So maybe think about things like that. You might not normally shop at the dollar store, right? But around this time, you just don't have it. Maybe it's a good idea. The other day, and this was a long time ago. I don't want to say another day. Maybe the other year. It was last year. Me and Lily were, uh, I don't remember, we were running late for something, a family function, or like, oh man, I forgot to pick up something. So we're like passing through the mall and there was the Dollar Tree. And we're
Hmm.
like, oh, boom, maybe they have it. So we go inside and we're supposed to just pick up one thing, but we both get like lost in their grocery aisle
Yeah.
because they have so many things. I had no idea. You can get, stuffing, you can get those tinfoil things that they need for the turkey or the ham, uh,
Crock pot
cutlery, crop
covers.
pot covers, drinks, side dishes, everything basically. It's like a miniature grocery store and dollar, a dollar. So start thinking outside the box. Maybe that's somewhere you normally shop. Smart idea. Like we started getting certain things from there.
Mm.
Other things we couldn't get, like steaks and stuff like that, ground beef, but other non-perishable items we started getting there because why are you going to pay $6 for something you could pay $1 for and is
Yeah.
basically the same thing? It's going to do the same function. So start looking at options like that to maybe minimize the cost, and still allow you to have a great meal.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I think weighs on a lot of people's hearts, especially parents, whether you're single or you're a two-parent family, you may be looking at, again, that comparison game,
Yeah.
looking, oh, well, this kid's getting that or whatever. Everyone's buying their kids Xboxes and iPhones and, cars and whatever. And you're looking at what you can do and you're like, I just can't do that.
Yeah.
Am I a bad parent?
No.
No. Let me just stop you right there. And I don't know, if there's parents listening to this, hopefully there are. You're doing a great job.
Yeah.
You doing what you can with what you have is the most admirable thing you can do.
Absolutely.
So don't think I'm failing as a parent because I can't get my kid an Xbox. Frankly, half those kids don't need an Xbox, but that's just my
They need
thought.
is a book.
Yeah, what they need is a book and the ability to read a face of a clock. But that goes in. I heard a whole story
Oh
about,
man.
well, I guess like librarians are bringing up all these things this new generation can't do.
Mm,
Most of them can't read a face clock because they've been reading digital their whole life.
digital, yeah.
And
Or
I
cursive.
or cursive, like, and I didn't realize how prevalent that was until people started working for our company,
Mm,
couldn't read a
yeah.
clock. They could only read digital. And so, I mean, that's kind of a tangent, but understand that, you not having the world's greatest amount of money is not any detriment or not any commentary on you. Some of the most admirable and dignified people I've ever met weren't rich.
Right.
And realistically, if we look at it, we're still, as far as the world goes, we're still pretty wealthy.
Yeah.
Like, we're just living in this country we're very wealthy. Our definition of poor is still pretty high on the food chain as far as the world goes.
Yeah.
But the most dignified and respectful people I've ever known, they weren't that way because they had an abundance. They were that way because they managed what they had.
Mm,
And there's often like jokes and stuff like, if you ever want to, stretch a dollar, ask a single mom
yeah.
because she can stretch the heck out of that dollar.
Yeah.
And it's true. A lot of parents right now, especially during the holidays, you might feel a little stress or a little guilt, like I can't do everything I'd want. You're doing more than enough. And I say that as an encouragement, just because holidays can be tough.
Yeah.
But we're also going to be kind of switching gears a little bit for those trying to maintain maybe a waistline or
Right.
trying to be a little more healthy during the holidays. There are ways to do that, and a lot of times we see things like advertisements for meal prep sites and stuff like that, and we think, man, eating healthy is so expensive. And in certain degrees it can be, but not always.
Right.
And also doesn't have to taste like garbage. Turns out we've come a long way in being healthy food.
Yeah.
So we have a couple recipes that we're going to put on our Instagram, things my wife makes that we love. They're delicious. One of them is a vegan pumpkin pie.
Yum.
Amazing. I love it. The other one, I believe, is it's a Whole30 compliant green bean casserole. And
Nice.
anyone familiar with Whole30 knows that's a pretty strict eating regimen. That leads us to our last tip of the day. Tip number 3: focus on family.
Mm, yep.
Keep the hot button topics off the table. So this can be as simple as, once everyone's sitting down for the Thanksgiving dinner, or sitting down for just hanging out, just have a conversation with everybody. Like, you know what? It's been a stressful year. There's a lot of stuff going on, the pandemic, all the political stuff. Today, I'd like us to just focus on family.
Yeah.
Let's just leave politics and religion and, Dr. Pepper versus Coca-Cola. Let's leave it all outside and just focus on family. Because realistically, they probably had a rough time this year too. And I think it's a pretty reasonable thing for us to just say, hey, let's keep it simple. Let's focus
Yeah.
on things that matter right now, and that's family.
Yeah.
Let's focus on building each other up and just enjoying each other's company. Whether that be playing a board game, we have our yearly Risk game. It's a board game we love to play. It takes a long time to finish a
Oh
game,
yeah.
but one of the positive things that came out of COVID is we started realizing what's necessary in our life.
Right.
We started
Yeah.
realizing the essentials. Toilet paper, who knew? Pretty essential. But also we realized, time with family is something we've been taking for
Right.
granted for a long time. So if you get a chance to spend time with family during these holidays, don't take it for granted. Really make sure that time's set for family.
Yeah, I think I agree. A beneficial element of a healthy and safe and enjoyable holiday is agreements beforehand. So that way everybody's on the same page. We don't do this during the holidays per se, but when we do our family trips where
Yeah.
we all get together and we go somewhere, maybe not this coming trip, we'll probably see that in the future when we have a vaccine or what have you. But when we do go, we all go together. Mom, as a rule, when she gets a basket or a bucket, whatever's available, and we all put our phones in it. And it's something that we agreed upon beforehand. And the reason for this is because we all have jobs, we have a lot going on.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the tendency that we tend to have is check our emails, find out what we're missing when we're not
Check our
at work.
Instagram.
Yeah. And so mom said, you know what? I really want to maximize the time we have. Life is short. And we started to see that as we lost some family members.
Mhm.
And so it became even more paramount for us to spend that time together. And so we're adults. And mom says, put your phones in the basket. We put our phones in the
You
basket.
you put the phone in the
You put
basket
the
or else
phone in
it
the
gets the hose
basket.
again.
And the reason why this is so important is one, obviously, because we stay off our phones, but you realize that you have so much time when you don't have your phone in your hand.
Yeah.
And that nervous tick to, well, I don't have anything to do, let me pull out my phone, is eliminated. And now you get to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And it's so fun. I enjoy that time. It's so relaxing. Obviously, when we leave the house, we all get our phones back because you got to safely communicate if you're going to the store or what have you, or going out and about for pictures. But while we're in that house, phones are in the basket.
Yeah.
And so agreements like that can really set the stage for an enjoyable time and maximize your conversations,
Yeah.
right?
And just the enjoyment of each other. Like,
Yeah.
I think I learned more things about my nephews just from like time spent without the phone in my
Absolutely.
hand than a lot of the time we spend around each other. Because if we think about it, I think a study said that we touch our phone 2,000 times a day. And if you think about like, oh, there's surely it's not 2,000 times. Try putting your phone down for an hour and see how many times you reach for it. I didn't realize how bad this was until my phone was charging or something. It was dead, and I reached for my pocket out of just reflex. I just
Mm,
reached for my pocket where I get my phone. It's like, man, I touch my phone a lot.
yeah.
And sometimes the best thing we can do with family is just eliminate distractions. Don't keep your phone on you. Turn the thing off if need be. I like the basket because that was. I think that's one of the best things we did.
It was hard at first, and it's not something you're used to, but
Yeah.
just getting that time together, it's precious. Um, like even if it's just for a short period of time, right? Whether if you can't do the whole day for whatever reason, that reminds me of The Office
Gotta
where
get my fix.
Ryan is doing the question. They're doing this like competitive thing at I don't remember where they're at, but basically there's a competition and he's on his phone. They're like, "Sir, we're gonna need you to put your phone away." And he's like, "Okay." And so he gives him, and then like literally 30 seconds later, he's like, "I'm sorry, I can't be with my phone. I want my phone." And it's just reminds me of like how like connected we are to our phones. We do use it for everything. We use it for work. We use it
Yeah.
for school. To Google something that comes to mind, you're like, "I wonder what this is. Let me Google it." And it's just second nature, like you
Yeah.
mentioned. And it's so hard for us to separate, but when we actually do and put it down, it's pretty awesome
Yeah.
to see what happens, especially when you have young kids. You see them and they're talking to you, and you're not like, oh, and you're scrolling. You actually connect with them, like to see in their eyes, like, hey, I matter. That's pretty awesome. So thank you for joining us for this episode. If this added value to your life, be sure to let us know either on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Let us know in the comments below. If you're on YouTube, share with your family and friends. We get a lot of encouragement from we hear somebody like, "Hey, I heard about the show. My
Yeah.
cousin sent it to me, or my uncle, my aunt, my sister, my daughter, whatever it may be." We just appreciate one, you sharing, and two, hearing about it. So continue to do that. We thank you so much. Lastly, what are some tips that you have to make sure your Thanksgiving is happy, safe, and healthy? Let us know.